the study of the end times, the final countdown, the day of the Lord and the judgment day and the apocalypse of Jesus Christ. The study of the book of Revelation. So the text begins, with apocalypse of Yesu Christo in Greek. Text begins with that. Which means apocalypse means, it's a Greek term. If it's translated into English, it means manifestation or revelation, and usually refers to the literature that's concerned with detailing the events of the end times. And the book of Revelation is in that literary genre. It's an end time prophecy. That's what it is about. Now, what you have just seen in that video, I just randomly pulled out from the YouTube account, and it's just a random video from a Hollywood movie. Just got it out from it. It's one of many ways in our popular culture and even some church circles in the past and even in the present, trying to portray the end times. And what he's trying to say is that it's not going to be all that pleasant at the end. It's going to be full of disasters and destructions and deaths, and with a doom and gloom, and it's going to be bleak and scary at the end. And that we have to do something about it. It's a catastrophic ending at the end. That's what popular culture tries to portray. Now, what I want to say, that what we want to go through through the next 7 sessions is that that's just one of several ways to actually look at the book of Revelation, and there are much more hopeful way to look at, and much more better way to actually envision our future, and much better way to actually interpret the book of Revelation that is much more, I would say, optimistic and hopeful and scholarly than what you have just seen. So, but let's just say that if you had this idea, if you were believing in that vision, that version only of this disastrous ending at the end, I would say that you might be a little bit scared of what's going to happen at the end, right? And you might want to do something about it, right? So let me. This is Ron Hubbard. He's from Dallas, Texas, and he's the one president of the Atlas Survival Shelters, and he's standing right in front of one of the shelters, survival end-time bunkers, and he has made and sold over the last 15-some years to average Americans who are preparing for the disasters, uncertain disasters in the future. So this thing costs anywhere between $25,000 to $250,000, which is not that expensive when you think about it. But when you put this in the underground, it's going to be quite a bit expensive, right? So it comes equipped with room large enough to store several years of food and water, and large enough for about 6 people to actually live in there. And it's kind of airtight and seal tight, like submarine. It's like seal tight from the outside, so you can't get in from the outside, right? And people, average Americans, actually buy this. So he sells this like one per each day, one bunker per each day. But when things really happen, like outside, when there's a missile crisis happening, like in North Korea, and threatening the missile crisis, he says his inventory sells out within 2 hours. Within 2 hours, he sells it. So business is doing really well. He's actually making about $8 million per year, and he's actually profiting more and more. And at this point, he's building about to open world's biggest survival shelter warehouse in Dallas, Texas. He's making a lot of money. He's been profiting when people are going into this scare mode. There are people actually making profit out of people's fear, because fear sells, right? Fear sells. There are people who are actually fearful and they were trying to prepare for what's going to happen in the future. And then there are other people who are actually making profit out of people's fears. So we have all these end-time bunkers to Hollywood blockbuster movies, to online games, to name it. There are a lot of host of books and all these different end-time products and industry out there, from popular culture to Hollywood to politics to even some church circles, all into this fear-mongering end-time products, because there's a profit to be made and there's powers to be grabbed in times of fear, right? Times of fear. So I just want you to know that I'm not going into that direction, okay? I'm not going into that direction. That's only one way. There are other ways to envision our future, other ways to interpret the book of Revelation, which is much more optimistic, much more hopeful, and much more scholarly, right? Much more scholarly. So that's where I'm going, if you are wondering where I'm going with this thing, okay? So last Sunday, I included insert, right, in your bulletin. Today as well, in your bulletin there's an insert that goes with every Sunday. I will provide with insert. It will cover for last Sunday and this coming Sunday as well. And I asked you, I had several questions for your personal reflection last Sunday, and then also asked you to listen to the book of Revelation through audio version. Did anybody actually have a chance to think about that? No? Okay. I really encourage you to do that, because it's it's very easy to do that when you actually open your internet and go to YouTube, and then just type the Revelation of John audio version, and then you will have several different versions. You can choose any one of them, right? And this particular one that we heard this morning was King James Version, right? You can hear it. And then you can be able to finish the book within just over 1 hour. That's all it takes. Just over 1 hour. I found it much more effective for me to listen to it than reading it, because I get distracted a lot. But when you listen to it, it's continuous, right? So much more effective for me, and also easier to get to know the book of Revelation. You can do this several times, right? So do that. Now, if you were to actually believe in the previous version of the book of Revelation, you probably would be kind of having you probably not appreciate the truth in the book of Revelation because of all the scary and strange visions and the details and events in the book, that it reads more like science fiction than scripture, right? You probably had that sort of, because there's a lot of other people. You're not alone in that sense. This book of Revelation has baffled and confused a lot of people. A lot of people over it ever since the beginning of the church. As a matter of fact, this book of Revelation was the last book who was actually included in the canon of the whole Bible. It's the last book, like several hundred years. It took several hundred years for the church to actually allow that, permitted that to be part of canon of our book, our whole Bible. So it's been a very controversial book ever since the beginning, and it's very challenging and very mysterious and misunderstood book in the whole entire Bible. So you are not alone if you are like that, right? So I just want you to know that you are not alone in that. So our purpose for the whole sermon series for next 7 sessions, because I'll be only covering for first chapter to chapter 13, and I hope that I have some time, maybe this year later, to actually cover the rest of it, because the rest of it is quite important. But first chapter to chapter 13. For our 7 sessions, the whole purpose of doing this is for us to get familiar with this book. I've heard a lot of people don't even want to touch this. And I heard a lot of preachers have never preached on the book of Revelation. They glanced over it. They just glanced over it. Part of their lectionary. It doesn't mean they will speak on it, but they glanced over it. I just want us to get familiar with this book, because popular culture out there is making a lot of money out of this book. So we need to do something about it. What do you do when you face fear? When you face the fear, right? So that's what we want to. We want to get familiar with this book, and then we want to embrace the truth in this book. The main truth, main message of this book. And as we get familiar with this book, and we will understand that this book is much more aligned with the main messages in the whole entire gospel. Entire gospel than what people out there. And then this book is a main message, a theme of this book is one of hope and redemption, than fear. What God wants to do, how God will restore God's kingdom at the end through the risen Christ. And along the way, my purpose, my hope is along the way we will somehow clear away some of these misconceived notions, miscommunicated ideas of this fear-mongering industries out there, fear-mongering end-time seers and soothsayers and fear-mongering messages out there. We just want to clear away some of this. So that's my purpose for this sermon series. So that you will come out with reading the book and you begin to understand that it's much more hopeful than I thought. It's a book of hope, folks. It's not about a book of fear, right? So that's my main point, purpose of this book. Now, just a little bit of a background about the book of Revelation. It's been written by John, Apostle John, sometime around AD 80 to 90, the end of the 1st century, and when he was quite an old man. And it was written in the island of Patmos. You know where the Patmos is? There are a lot of people, actually, a lot of Christians do a pilgrimage over there. Ever since John wrote the book, and ever since there's been a Christian pilgrimage over there, it's somewhere around Turkey, Western Sea in Turkey. You have gone to that area? I mean, I've gone through maps, but it's around there, actually. That's where he was imprisoned. And he said he received the visions from the one, the risen Christ, and he's writing it down, what he has received. And his purpose of this book was to encourage Christians who are going through quite a bit of persecutions in times of Roman Emperor Domitian, and who, when the emperor cult worship, emperor worship was re-established in his own time, and they were forcing Christians to participate in worshiping emperor at the time, and they're going through a persecution. So he wants to encourage his Christians. So his appeal, so that's why he says his appeal to Christians, and he says 7 churches. You will see addressed to 7 churches, where Paul founded and John actually ministered to those churches, and he wants to encourage these Christians who were going through this tribulations and persecutions, for not to forsake their faith in face of threat in persecution, so to keep their faith and make faith and moral choices based on God's truth. And that's his appeal in the letters. And we begin to understand that his appeal is not only for that time, but it's a timely and also timeless in every generation, because we, in every generation, one way or the other, we face persecution or persuasions that where church and Christians were in a situation where we sometimes threaten to compromise our faith, and we need to encourage ourselves how to prepare ourselves and equip ourselves to make right and truthful choices based on God's truth. So in that sense, the book of Revelation is apocalyptical in that nature, that it reveals and uncovers the forces and the powers and temptations of every generation and every age, and how the Christians will need to equip ourselves and prepare, and so that we don't compromise our truth in the word found. So that's what it means, the apocalypse now, and apocalypse tomorrow as well. Everyone okay so far? Right? I'm doing a little bit of lecture this morning. So I'll be for next several sessions, I'll be doing more of a lecture than sermon, right? Sometimes I'll throw in some of the sermons, but so this is a little bit of a lecture than anything else. So how do you interpret the book of Revelation? How do you interpret it, right? So that's one of the main things I think we need to actually clarify at the beginning. So there have been, and traditionally church has gone through 4 different ways to interpret a book of Revelations. 4 different ways. First, there's one view, it's everything in the book of Revelation happened in the past. So it's pointing to the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70, right? Fall of Jerusalem and pointing to that. And that's what this was all about. But as you know, the book of Revelation was written by 80 to 90. It's about the future. So it's not relevant in that sense. And so that's what the view of the past, so it doesn't have much of relevance for those people who are going into persecutions in the 80s and 90s, and also even for us as well, if it's only happened in the past. So but that's the past view of people who are looking at this from the past. It happened in the past. It's not really relevant for us now. And then we have historicity. So the views suggest that images and symbols in the whole book, and like there's seals, and you got trumpets, and you got bowls, and all of these things were actually referred to specific events in the history of Western church, European church. For example, the fall of Roman Empire, the corruption of the Roman Catholic Church, the Reformation era, and then World War I and II, and so specific events, and then trying to put this together. Now, the problem with this historicity is that it's not relevant to those people who are outside of Western culture, Western church, and Western European church. So it's not relevant to them at all. And also, this view always think that Jesus is coming imminent, right? Imminent, always, and trying to fit that into a specific event in the history of Western civilization. So sometimes we have how many different denominations, Christian denominations have gone through this in the past as well, like the Seventh-day Adventist Church has gone through that, Jehovah's Witness. How many times did they predict it? Well, in the last 100 years, I think they predicted something like more than 10 times, and kingdom gone, kingdom gone, kingdom gone. They just revised over and over, right? So that's this reason. The future, this is most popular, where popular culture is grabbing hold of this one. Future, this will happen in the soon near future. And quite well known, the version of a lot of the fundamental churches actually got into this is dispensation futurism. It means is that they read the whole book of Revelation more of a literally and also chronological basis. So it has to fit a certain pattern. It has to fit into the pattern of the whole history and literally. And so it comes with the restoration of Israel comes first, and then there's a rapture of the Christian church comes next, and then there's 7 years of tribulation comes next, and then there's a rise of the Antichrist. Antichrist comes next, and then there's a war. The nations will wage war against Jerusalem, and then right after that, the risen Christ comes next and defeats the enemies, and then 1,000 years of Christ ruling. So that's based on that pattern. It's like the pattern's really clear focus, dispensational futurism. And then what happens is that they try to fit the history to their pattern all the time, to change their pattern. So that's the problem with this, changing their pattern. And then seeing the Antichrist, the different figures in history, like Hitler was Antichrist. What's his name? Saddam Hussein was Antichrist. Even some of the popes were Antichrist. And then even Obama was Antichrist. Yeah, so they try to fit that into, do that. So what happens with this is that it doesn't, it really separating church from the culture, from the world. It really separating us from the others, right? So there's a great deal of separation, and there isn't much of relevance for us. And now there's another one, which is much more scholarly is that it's viewing whole. It's idealistic viewing whole symbolic signs and symbols in the book of Revelation is presentation of a battle between good and evil in every generation, every age. Not only one, every age. So all those signs and symbols in the book of trumpets and seals and the bowls and all of this, some of the historical events that we face in every age. Every age. So he's seeing and looking at the book of Revelation just strictly from symbols and signs. Now, this is where I am very much into it, but we need to modify this a little bit because there are clear, literally at the end, where toward the end, not only symbols and signs, but at the end, where Christ Jesus will return, and the enemy will be defeated, and then there will be restoration of God's kingdom and new heaven, new earth. So we need to modify this. So where we want to go is more of syncretic, redemptive, historical. We want to look at mostly it's looking at all of this. There's a little bit about past, a little bit of historical, a little bit of future, but also mostly ideal. But also there is reading the whole book of Revelation through the lens of symbols and signs, but there are certain chapters, certain portions of the book of Revelation that is quite chronological as well. So seeing the whole thing not only for the people in John's time, but also Christians throughout the centuries, throughout all age, that applicable to all of us, and not only for now, but for the future as well. And it's and how do you is it literal or symbolic? How do you read? Literal or symbolic in the book? The rule of thumb is this. Read and interpret the content of Revelation as signs and symbols, unless you are forced to read literally. Interpret literally. Right? So the whole content, reading it as signs and symbols. Don't read it like literally, folks. 666 is sign, symbol. It's not literal number. Now I'll go with that. I'll interpret that later, what that means, how the number should work. But looking at 666 and then looking at all the trumpet sound, it very symbolic. Number 7 is very symbolic. Right? So mostly read and interpret symbolically, unless you are forced to read literally. When you looking at the beginning of John, it says, Samaino Apostolis. John speaking about Samaino, which means signify. Jesus, Samaino, signify. That's how we communicate. Signify means signs and symbols. Right? And that's how Jesus communicated to John. Not literally, it's going to happen, but there are signs and symbols. And as we know, Jesus has used a lot of different literary methods to communicate the truth, parables in the Bible, right? Those are not, we shouldn't read it and interpret it literally. Right? Kingdom of God is like farmer going out there sowing the seed, right? That's a literally way of understanding parables, right? Prodigal sons. Those are parables of what kingdom of God is like, representing. I'll be speaking more about signs and symbols next week. I think I'll just finish around here for now. So when you look at your insert today, it's we have we listened to first chapter. For next chapter 2 and chapter 3, I'd like you to, if you have time to read or listen to it, and then at the back there's blanks where we need to fill it out and to compare. And how does that mean? How does that compare to the church now? And I'll be speaking about the church that is the very last one that Jesus really despised, the Laodicean church, Christian church, and I'll focus on that next Sunday. It is apocalypse now, as Revelation is not only us now, but also happening into the future. And now what Jesus has said to John, seeing signs and symbols, but they're toward the end, when Christ Jesus will come. Christ Jesus will come, and he will restore God's kingdom. The enemy will be defeated. To restore God's kingdom, there will be a new heaven and new earth. And John speaks about at the end. So, Apocalypse Now, I just thought that it was quite cool. You all remember that movie, right, folks? So I thought, just put it out there. Okay, let's sing I Fly Away.